There's been a lot of talk about Priest in general, and especially this Purify card. Pretty much everyone universally admits that Purify sucks. Purify at its current state will, of course, never see any play because Silence exists, and Silence targets both friendly minions and enemy minions, and it costs 0. And draw a card isn't worth as much as 2 mana. So, how about just 1 mana? And then you have your Ancient Watcher, which can be a Yeti at a discount, although it requires combinations. You have your Eerie Statue, which is a 4 mana 7/7, but doesn't have the Overload 2, just has Overload 1 instead. And it has all of the flexibility things. And it's, interestingly enough, of all cards that inspired me of what would make Priest great again, is Purify is a very specific niche situation which says draw a card at the end. And I can't help but wonder if that's what Blizzard has planned. Because every single class has a bit of an identity, and usually multiple identities. Priest's main identity right now are big heals. It's kind of aimed for a control class, but it lacks card draw. Sure, you have Northshire Cleric, but that's about it. Its main value is supposed to be healing, and its hero power, you can heal, but you can't go over 30. Unlike Warrior, you can't heal minions if you aren't going to be able to control the board, and if you actually print too many good board control cards for Priest, then they're unstoppable because you just play the cards and then you heal them. So maybe they need a little bit of something else. The grand idea. A narrow effect, and then draw a card on there. And Priest already has a lot of narrow effects, like Shadow Word Pain, Shadow Word Death. Those are narrow effects. You have to target something with 3 or less attack. You have to target something with 5 or more attack. So the great idea is to create more narrow cards like Purify. Why not make Priest have a theme of narrow effects or utility effects and then add draw a card to them? You just simply add draw a card to Power Word Glory, and then that becomes a lot better, and I think this card actually sees play. Choose a minion whenever attacks, restore 4 health to your hero, draw a card, and fuse. Swap the attack and health of all minions. Like, why would you ever want to do that? That's a very weird effect. But you just add at the end of it, draw a card. Convert. Put a copy of an enemy minion to your hand. It requires your opponent having an enemy minion. But at the end of the effect, you just say, draw a card. It's better than Arcane Intellect in that it's 2 mana, draw 2 cards, but one, it requires your opponent to have an enemy minion on the board. 2, it kind of requires your opponent to have a good enemy minion on the board, encouraging Priest's role in the late game. Or you can even like make it 3 mana if it would be too strong. Mass Dispel is a very specific effect of silence all enemy minions, and then it has draw a card. But hey, we can actually make this card better. It's obviously terrible right now. Nerf that down to 3 mana so we can push the Priest narrow ability plus draw a card. Shadow Word Hearth, man, that is a narrow ability. Destroy all minions with 2 or less attack. Let's add draw a card at the end. Power Word Tentacles, that's overcosted, and it's like a utility effect. You have minion +2/+6. What it needs here is just add draw a card. Some of these, actually, surprisingly, the only card that I think that would need a change in addition to adding the text draw a card to it would be Convert, which might be too good if it was 2 mana. So put it on 3 mana. This was all inspired by Purify. On Purify, all we have to do is knock the mana cost of Purify down to 1. This is my grand idea for Priest's identity, as well as a PR move to make. I do think that Blizzard, Hearthstone in general, should be more nimble and be more willing to make changes. When a class has been the weakest for 4 months, and it looks like it will continue to be the weakest after this adventure for like 3 to 4 months until the next expansion comes in, at which point probably Blizzard's trying to make Priest the best class, or give it some stuff because of possibly Blizzard's philosophy of balance, as we can see from this comic here of Nerf Now. It's taking too long for Priest to have their turn. We want Priests to have their turn now, or faster. And this Hearthstone, it's a digital medium. People have said other card games would kill to be able to be so nimble. So I encourage Hearthstone to be a bit more nimble, to take advantage of this Purify fiasco and like make a move. I don't even think that changing these cards will make Hearthstone like super imbalanced for Priest. Like, I've chosen cards that are absolute trash tier. These cards, by the way, they are printed far in, I mean, they're designed far in advance of the actual expansion. That's something that I learned, but Blizzard needs to be more nimble. Hearthstone needs to be more nimble, that is. Wasn't there an opportunity to notice that Priest was the weakest class 2 months in advance? I understand that 4 months ago you couldn't have told that Priest was the weakest class with the release of Whispers of the Old Gods, because those are new cards, but 2 months in, you could have started to see, okay, Priest isn't doing that well. Nimbleness is required. 2 months in, I don't think it would have broken too much to make Purify 1 mana card, just as an example. Here's something nimble that Blizzard can do. Simply add a card to all of Powered Glory, Confuse, Convert, Shadow Word Horror, and Powered Tentacles. For the cards that already say draw a card but are too expensive, knock a mana off. Purify from 2 to 1, Mass Dispel from 4 to 3. You know, appease the community. You don't really need to test this. It's not gonna break everything. If Priest ends up being too powerful because of these changes somehow, then oh well, then Priest will have their time. This will give Priest like a few more toys to play with, and even though they probably will still suck, it'll be a lot more interesting. But probably more importantly, I think that a cool mechanic to add into the Priest set, Priest class, is the cantrip. I don't think many classes right now have this cantrip effect. Why not give it to Priest? A cantrip is from kind of Magic the Gathering's terminology, where a card will say draw a card on it and then have kind of a small effect. The card replaces itself and then does that small effect. So I think it would be cool for Priest to have the cantrip ability here on a serving, on a platter.